Previously on the Beam Chronicles.
I busted a guy who was using domesticated alligators to rob a bank. That was a month after I had my brain physically taken from my skull.
Equalization is our last resort, even against the most potent of anomalies. A motto of mine goes, defang if you can defang, contain if you can contain.
Anyway, yeah, this Foone apparently is making a break for good old American soil where he'll be promptly busted and equalized.
Pending Howie's approval.
Howie always has a contingency plan. He always leaves himself a way out.
Maria, why can't Howie just make stuff up and call it a forecast?
It's sort of like religious for him. He really respects the process, like on a deep spiritual level.
Then one day I got in a car accident and went into a coma for a week. And when I woke up, my hands were like this. It was like we were made to fight together.
Don't move, please.
I had never been so fucking proud of a bust.
These are the Beam Chronicles, with your host, MJ Dooney. Book 1, Initiation, Chapter 11, Jaxon Teaque.
It was funny how 5 minutes ago the combined strength of Charlie and me was just barely enough to pin Tyler Foone. I had pushed that storage bin harder than I'd ever pushed anything, so far beyond the point of personal constraint that it made my vision blurry, and he went toe-to-toe right back with me, yet here he was, the once mighty blue warrior, now just a whining little prisoner. He was face down in the sand, arms and legs hogtied behind his back, writhing and groaning powerlessly against the shackles we'd put on him. Regular, standard-issue shackles. And all he could do was complain about it without any water. Charlie would press his face down with her boot every time he got too loud, which would stop him grumbling, only long enough for him to spit all the sand out. And her antagonizing of Tyler was the only thing that even momentarily distracted her from raving about my performance to Murphy, Phil, and most vigorously Howie. She was about to wrap up the recap.
And then he says, don't move, please, because that's what I said when I caught him, remember? Remember when I busted JT all those months ago before he turned into a Titanic strength, a non-busting motherfucker?
Charlie, your enthusiasm has been noted. I understand Jaxon was nothing less than exemplary in this effort.
Exemplary isn't the word, Howie. Shit, there isn't a word to describe it, how clutch and on the ball and perfect he was today. Go tell everyone, understand? Yell it in the HQ lobby at the top of your lungs that the prophecies were right. It took a while, kind of a late bloomer, but have no doubt JT has attained his potential and it is 10 times better than advertised.
And Jaxon, how do you feel? How does it feel to be so intricate a part in a successful bust of this high magnitude?
I feel like Murphy needs new glasses, and you need to work on your penmanship, Howie. Hearty laughter broke out through the comm. Charlie just rolled her eyes. No, it feels really great. Kind of empowering, really exhilarating, all of that. My heart's still pounding.
Yeah, remember when you told me you were bored with the action these days, Shade? Well, I told you I'd get you excited again. It was an accident, but hey, whatever works.
Murphy cut in, obviously relieved at how things shook out, given his part.
That guy wasn't a 9, by the way. It took everything we had to beat him. I'm thinking maybe 16, maybe 17.
Yeah, well, look at him now, I pointed out. He's only dangerous in the ocean, so maybe that 9 was just an average. I mean, it was forecasted, so maybe it was based on how much water, on average, he'd be around, and we happened to fight him right in his perfect element.
Yeah, see, this is why I hate the PR system. It takes no account of situational factors.
Actually, while we're talking about his situational strength, sorry to be the nerdy science guy on this, but since I'll probably never get a chance to get evidence on how the hell he does all of what he does, could someone just hit him for me real quickly?
Yeah.
He hadn't finished his request before Charlie crouched over and punched Foone square in the face. Foone growled and squirmed, but in spite of his efforts, was still bound up.
Why'd I do that? Other than because I really wanted to.
Is he bleeding? Did he absorb the hit like he was doing when you guys were fighting him?
Huh. What do you know? Yeah, he is bleeding.
Yeah, like I thought. The invulnerability thing is probably linked to his absorbed state. Taking in the water not only modifies it so he can control it, it modifies him so that his organs and tissues, hell, his whole body is all solid until it's impacted, then it goes liquid.
So I guess keep this guy dry then. Keep him away from water and he's got no punch, no imperviousness. Charlie shot me a long, telling, communicative look. The message behind it was loud and clear, something like, "Don't start this. After everything we just did, after that awesome victory, don't mess it up with your contain him crap." I registered it perfectly, but that didn't mean I couldn't ignore it.
Yes, on to matters of business, I suppose. As you're no doubt aware, I have yet to foresee the course of action for this particular case, and since he was unevaluated, I defer that judgment to my equalizers in the field. I assume to know the answer already given his history and destructive capacity, but just to be sure we're following the premonition correctly, Charlie, what course of action?
Equalize him.
She said it at Howie, but to me, nodding slowly, indicating with her eyes that this was the correct answer, the only answer. She was practically begging me to follow her lead. I closed my eyes so I wouldn't have to look at her, meshed my hands on top of my head through my hair.
Naturally, yes, and Jaxon?
Don't you dare.
I thought I heard her growl faintly behind me, but pretended that I didn't. Howie, he's containable. We just said it, right? Keep him dry, and there's nothing he can do. Can't we do that? Lock him up in a drought so he can't hurt anybody else? I opened my eyes and met Charlie's. There was a similar stare I'd faced once at Beam, in Howie's office, when I called out his inconsistencies and challenged his authority, but like I said, it was only similar. This one was so much worse, so much more terrifying and piercing, but worst of all, that twinge of sadness, disappointment. It was as if she wanted to strangle me and save me, all at the same time. It was somewhat like the look my mom would give me when she caught me doing something that broke her heart, only Charlie's was 100 times more intense. Like a punch in the gut. Worse, I think it could have physically killed me. And it was almost enough to make me change my mind about saving Tyler Foone's worthless, pathetic life. I spun around so I wouldn't have to face it.
It's possible, I suppose.
Howie surprisingly understood.
Though I'm not sure it's quite as simple as you say. He needs some water to survive, as all people do. How do you propose we supply him with that and prevent him from absorbing it?
Make it a slow drip, right into his veins, just barely enough to keep him from dying from dehydration, so that if he absorbs it, instead of using it metabolically, he dies. He'll be on the brink the whole time. You could work that out, right, Phil? You could work out how much he needed and engineer something to get it to him slow enough that he'd stay alive but wouldn't be able to punch back?
I mean, yeah, I could probably do that.
Phil stammered, apparently as shocked by my insistence on Foone's salvation as Charlie was, and wishing to take no part in the discussion.
Give him just above the medically required dosage of water. I don't really understand why we would want to sustain the, super dangerous killer guy, but,
It would hardly be cost-efficient, Jaxon. That much monitoring to make sure the rate of water distribution never fell above or below the proper level. The energy alone, emergency backup plans to contain him just in case he managed to access some water. If the roof leaks or a pipe breaks, not to mention medical, would have to be on call whenever he dipped low. I'm not sure these are resources we'd be willing to divert to such a case.
Okay, so I guess we should add an asterisk to contain if you can contain, then in the fine print, only if it's cheap enough, right? I caught a glimpse of Charlie. She had not flinched. I shrugged at her contritely, but if it changed anything, it only made her more upset, more intense. There was an elongated pause before Howie slowly spoke.
Jaxon, I understand you feel ganged up on, but I'm not sure I like your tone.
Look, if we're not going to follow the mission statement
It's not a mission statement. Defang, contain, etc. It holds no implication over what practices we adhere to or courses we take. It's merely a motto.
I knew this ploy now, pedantically insisting on specific words or minor details I was wrong about just to get me flustered into saying something stupid. The master of distraction, trying to throw me off my perfectly vindicated soapbox, but I wasn't going to fall for it. I get it, my mistake. I think there are other more ethical options to explore before we equalize him outright.
And I'm certain a man of such upstanding moral fiber as Tyler Foone appreciates your commitment to ethical treatment.
Howie, that's not connected. Who Tyler is doesn't matter.
Oh, for once we see eye to eye. Only what he is matters. A dangerous anomaly.
So am I.
Back to this, are we? How many times must we repeat the same inane conversation?
And just like me, he's containable, so why does he get equalized for it?
Jaxon, if this is some admission of suicidal inclinations, I would be more than happy to assist you in following through.
I'd never heard him so angry, so bluntly threatening like that. For a second, I thought I was getting to him, exposing him, possibly to himself. But when he spoke again, all calmness had been restored.
I thought we resolved these questions of guilt, this tendency to compare yourself with anomalies during your 2-month stint in evaluations. Maybe the experience was not as enlightening for you as I'd intended it to be. Tell me, Jaxon, who was your supervisor in evaluations? Maria Caraway. Am I mistaken?
Oh, shit. I don't understand what she has to do with...
I've always thought that when a child is misbehaving, it's more an indictment of the parents, and it is typically so with a disgruntled employee and an ineffective boss. Perhaps your education of the process was tainted by sloppy management. To be honest, I've had my issues with Maria in the past.
No, this isn't about Maria. Leave her out of this. This is between you and me.
Is it, Jaxon?
He wryly provoked me.
Here I thought you were only illuminating the ethical alternatives for this particular case. Was it all intended to be a challenge issued to me? A confrontation? A rebelling against my authority? Jaxon, this is quite an unexpected turn from you. I'm not sure how we should approach this problem. If you are truly insisting
Let's keep him alive.
Charlie cut in, monotone but firm, insistent and loud. I spun around to face her head on. Her expression hadn't changed, still laser beams of fury and guilt scorching my soul.
Charlie?
Howie was flabbergasted. I opened my mouth to say something, to pull Charlie out of the line of fire, but she grouped over to me and slammed me into the truck, holding her forearm into my throat and her hand against my mouth. She got within a 1/4 inch of my ear and spoke in a deadly whisper, too quiet for the comms.
Not another fucking word.
Charlie, am I to understand that you'd also like to follow up Ava's greatest triumph with a full-fledged mutiny?
It's not a mutiny, Howie. I'm not agreeing with Jackson's stupid reasoning because it's fucking stupid as fuck.
It was like her icy blue eyes were digging a hole in my skull. I couldn't have jumped in if I wanted to.
But this was all forecasted down to the letter except this last part, which you deferred to us, right?
Correct.
He muttered with a venomous, level tone.
And Jaxon used that deferral to vouch for keeping him alive. Maybe that's destiny playing its course. Maybe Foone is supposed to be alive, and this is just the forecast playing out.
But for what earthly reason would we want to keep a miscreant wretch like Tyler Foone alive?
To join ranks.
She flatly retorted, still glowering at me.
Let him raisin in the dungeon for a spell until he can't take it anymore. Control how much liquid he gets so we can keep him under control. Then put him in Ava and let his power work for us.
Brilliant. Maria had just told us before the battle the only thing Howie was obedient to was his belief in the nature of his forecasts. Profoundly and religiously, he thought the way things always shook out during this type of event was exactly as they were supposed to, leading him to the only correct result. And here we were, in the waning seconds of the last lingering thread of a tied-up forecast. Howie could not rescind his immediate visceral response. He would piece it together himself. Destiny wanted him to allow us to decide, and we decided, together, that Foone should live. It didn't even matter why. It didn't even matter that I stupidly fell for his taunt regarding Maria, and he was intent on equalizing Foone just to punish me for it. His intentions weren't relevant. He had no choice. Fate made him defer to us, and so fate clearly wanted Tyler alive. And if there was anything in the world he was bound to more than his abilities, it was his lust for power. How could a man as ambitious as Howie pass up the thought of equipping a weapon as potent as Tyler Foone to his army? Struck with the realization that his hands were tied by whatever force granted him his foresight, a force he dare not disobey, and salivating at the notion of increasing his prodigious grip on the whole world, Howie finally spoke, having constructed a way to backpedal gracefully without appearing indecisive through the door Charlie had left open for him.
Intriguing proposition, Charlie. Perhaps I've allowed myself to get too emotional, clouded my judgment of the potential gains to be had here. Jaxon, very well. I will see to you this small victory when such a larger one is to be had. Bring Tyler Foone back to HQ, and for the time being, he will be contained.
Howie, I really don't think this is such a good idea.
It is decided, Murph, and we won't discuss it further. Are we clear?
We disconnected our comms, and Charlie backed away, releasing me from the hold she had me in against the truck. For a second, I thought she was going to hit me in the face. The amount of pent-up wrath she'd clearly been holding in, I wouldn't have been surprised, or even all that upset. Instead, she put it into words.
Seriously, Jaxon, what the fuck?
Charlie, that was incredible. Using his own superstition about the forecast, plus his own greed against him like that, manipulating him when he thought he was in complete control of the situation.
This guy, Jaxon. This guy is worth fighting for. This deranged, dangerous psycho, this child-murdering asshole. You're gonna stand up to Howie, risk your life and Maria's for him.
I know. I'm sorry. Let's just not get into it, okay? Profit forecast fulfilled. You saved my ass 14 times a day, and now once more. I'll never repay you. Let's just go back to HQ.
No, we're talking about this. You need to learn to pick your fucking battles, JT. Honestly, I get that this equalizer shit bothers you. You don't even understand how much I get that, and I know you're never gonna stop doing this kind of thing completely, but you just can't pull this guilty remorse martyrdom shit over guys like Tyler, or you'll never equalize anybody.
There's no distinction, Charlie. There's not this guy versus that guy who deserves to get equalized. It's just guys. And none of them deserve it, not to me. You're right, okay? You're right. I'll never equalize anybody. I'll stand up for every single person I have a fighting chance of saving. I shouldn't have joined Beam in the first place, and I honestly don't care if Howie kills me for it anymore. She frowned, like I'd somehow insulted her personally.
And Maria? If he kills Maria for it, or Murphy, or Phil, what if he tries to kill me, Jaxon?
I wouldn't let... He wouldn't do that. Not if I gave myself up willingly.
Jaxon, you are the most thick-headed, stubborn jackass I've ever met in my entire life. Why is it taking you so long to wrap your head around the
Charlie,
fact
forget it, okay? I said we shouldn't get into it. This is why. We're not going to see eye to eye on this. I know it's not how you view things. I know it's not how you process, but I can't do it your way. Just shut everything out and pretend it's not wrong when it is. I know how you are. I'm just not the kind of guy who can...
Stop. Whatever the fuck you're saying, stop before I beat you. This is about me now.
I didn't mean...
You know how I am? How is that, Jaxon? I'm curious. How am I?
Look, I just know that it doesn't bother you. Not as much as it does me, and that's okay. It's just you can't expect me to...
Wait, sorry to interrupt again. I'm just trying to come up with the phrase, but I don't think they have it yet. Maybe you could help. It's sort of like fuck you, only 70 times stronger. Do they have that one yet? You think you could just repeat fuck you 70 times in your brain for me, pretend I said it, and then sum up the effect of all 70 collectively to give you the impression I'm going for?
Charlie, I really wasn't trying to offend you. It's just obvious to me. You're more okay with death than I am. She shook her head in frustrated indignation, then glanced up at me briefly like she had something to say. She grouped away before she could say it, and I assumed the conversation was through. But not 5 seconds later, 5 seconds alone on the beach with Tyler Foone in handcuffs rolling in the sand, Charlie kicked open the door of the truck and slammed it behind her. She marched up to Tyler, grabbed him by the hair, and forced the noise-canceling earphones she'd fetched from the truck onto his head. Tyler grunted, and she punched a tooth out.
Fuck!
Then she stood up to talk.
You want to know why I'm the way I am, Jaxon? You want to hear all the facts, or is your judgmental distinction already too firmly set in fucking stone? You think I'm okay with death? Here's a story for you about me and death. I told you once, when I was 17, right before Beam recruited me, that I went into a coma. What I left out was that I was driving the car when I went into it, and that car had my 2 little brothers riding with me in the back seat. So when I woke up in the hospital and my hand was ungrouped and floating in my face and I was a terrified child who didn't know what was happening, I asked them to see my family and they sent in the psychiatrist. So I should have fucking known right then, but she told me, so gentle and sugar-coated and sweet, it didn't matter how she actually said it, I could see through the bullshit. I knew what it meant. It was, well, you killed both of your brothers. And then your mom was so grief-stricken, she thought all her kids were dead, so she committed suicide. So basically, yeah, I guess you killed your mom too, and your dad, he's alive, maybe, somewhere, but he ran away about a week ago and nobody knows where the hell he is. So hell, maybe that one was just like an emotional murder, right?
She paused briefly. I'd never seen her cry.
I was 17. You fucking ass. I was a baby and I fell asleep, and when I woke up, my whole family was dead. My world was shattered and I was physically disappearing in front of my own eyes. I wasn't scared. I was too empty to be scared. I was fucking nothing. Powerless and nothing and utterly alone, and then in rode Howie, knight in shining armor, with promises that he could save me from the bottom of the barrel, make me into something worthwhile, something awesome. He was the only person in the world who tried to help me, so now I'm selfish for taking his help? Am I immoral and ruthless and callous? Can you blame a little girl who accidentally killed her whole family for shooting some alligators when it was the only thing, the only stranger who wanted to help her asked for in return? You know, I cried for those alligators, Jaxon. I sobbed for hours about them, but from alligators, it was only one rung down to monsters, then men who acted like monsters, then monsters who acted like men. So conniving and gradual, always just a half step out of my comfort zone, but never anything more. Puppet Master Howie had it all so fucking planned out. Remember that guy? That lying, cheating thief you killed? Well, this one's not a liar, that one's not a cheater, and he's not a thief. What's the big deal, right? You honestly think you're so much better than me. You think your fucking morality is just so much better than mine. Let's review the fact that you joined Beam because you were afraid of Howie. I joined because he scraped me off the goddamn pavement when I was a kid, literally falling apart, and then he hoisted me into something important. I joined because I respected him. I trusted him. I fucking loved him. And then one day, I don't know why, it was just one too many murders. I was done with it. I didn't want to be manipulated anymore. I told him I couldn't. I told him I lost my sparkling vision of the kind of man he was. I quit. Just like I always thought I had the prerogative to do, half expecting him to kill me on the spot and not caring in the slightest. Instead, he smiled so pleasantly. He told me he understood. He gave me this big hug, and then he fucking shut me off. And I was a brain in a jar, floating there in an impossibly dark abyss, occasionally fighting to the surface with my sixth sense, getting a quick glimpse of everything around my unoccupied body, the whole universe going through its motions, but I couldn't touch it. I couldn't see it or change it, and then I slid back down to the bottom of the nothing. Time passed, but I only knew that after I came back, and even then, how could it only have been an hour and a half? Because while I was out, I couldn't perceive it. Time, I had nothing to judge it against. It was like a dream that I knew I was trapped in, but I couldn't wake up, and the nightmare was that nobody could see me, or hear me, or talk to me, or acknowledge that I existed. I was vacant. I was nothing all over again. It was only an hour and a half, but to me, it was a month, and it might as well have been forever. It fucking felt like forever. You wanna know why I suppress it? You want to know why I pretend it doesn't bother me? Because I spent a goddamn eternity with nothing else to do except think about what I'd become. So maybe I figure I've done that enough. Howie's not going to kill you if you don't play his game, Jaxon. And I've been trying to get it through your stupid, fat, fucking head that there's only one choice. Press on, head down. But apparently, you have to get beat across the face with it before you realize the truth, so better from me than from him. He always has a contingency plan. I don't know what he has in store for you specifically, but trust me, whatever it is, if it's anything like mine, you'll be on your knees begging him to kill you when it's done. And then you'll beg him to let you kill someone else.
Charlie.
Seriously, you have the audacity to stand there like some kind of stoic pinnacle of good. You stand there and tell me it doesn't bother me, like it bothers you, and you don't even know shit. Brandishing your clean slate in my face like it's a trophy you've earned and you're never gonna stop, no compromise, like you're the only one who's ever tried that. Like you're the only one with guilt or a soul, like you're the only one who sees this place for the propagandical genocide machine that it is. You're not unique, Jaxon. You're just the loudest and the fucking stupidest. You're not even the first. And hell, while we're on the subject of your little ethical pedestal, next time you're so keen to hop up onto it, keep in mind the only reason you still think you're entitled to it is because I'm fucking carrying it for you as I slip on down that slippery slope toward damnation. Alright, I know I'm going to hell. I know there's no absolution left for me, but you don't get to remind me of that, when the only reason your hands are so clean is because mine are twice as bloody.
Charlie, I didn't...
Nope. You never, ever do you?
Why didn't you tell me this sooner?
Because I didn't want to. I've never told anyone that before. 3 people on the whole planet know that whole story. Howie, me, now you. I don't even ever want to think about it, and now I'm saying it all out loud. It gives you a pretty articulate picture of just how much you managed to piss me off after what used to be a pretty fucking sweet day. Now, put your motherfucking serial killer nuclear bomb that I helped you save in the goddamn truck, and I swear to God, Jaxon, if you use your hands to do it, I'll pull your head out of your ass, shove it into his for a nice new perspective, and ungroup both of you and be done with it.
This time she grouped away for good, leaving me alone on the beach with that moral void unworthy of salvation softly snickering with his face down in the sand. I telekinetically kicked him in the stomach, and he flew 10 feet away from me with a loud bellow. I didn't feel any better.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Beam Chronicles, a fiction podcast written and produced by me, MJ Dooney. I would be extremely pleased and grateful if you could throw me a rating on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you're hearing this. I'm seeing really nice steady growth as far as listeners go, and I love it so much. But if you have someone in your life who might appreciate the story I'm telling, please share the word. I'm still really small doing this solo, so any positive word of mouth is great. I'm so curious about who's listening to this, so if you want to shoot me an email with some constructive criticism or encouragement or just to say hi, beamchronicles@gmail.com. I would be ecstatic to hear some feedback. Also, if you like what you hear or want to get updates, you can follow me on Twitter @BeamChronicles or TikTok, same handle. I've also been posting episodes to YouTube. If you want to like, follow, subscribe there. I still have no idea what to do with Instagram, but follow me there too, I guess. All music and sound effects were sourced through the Epidemic Sound Library. Special thanks to Sergio Duarte for creating the cover art for this podcast. You can find him on Instagram. Next week, I'll definitely have a new episode, but with Thanksgiving coming up, I don't know about the week after that. Thanks again for listening.